How's it going, everybody? This is Josh from Kingdom Auto. Today we're going to be testing a 2005 Volvo XC70. Let's do this. So we've got our first station wagon on the channel today. This is exciting stuff, I tell ya. So this is the second generation Volvo XC70. It was made from 2004 to 2007, and in terms of engine choices here, you had the 2.5 liter turbo inline 5, which put out around 200 horsepower and over 200 foot-pounds of torque as well, and I'll confirm that above.
This Volvo actually came with two different variations of the 2.5 liter engine, one being gasoline and one being diesel. The gasoline engine put out 208 horsepower and 236 foot-pounds of torque, whereas the diesel put out 182 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque.
This car has 402,000 kilometers on it. So this is a good test in terms of whether or not you should buy something like this, I think, because this is an ideal case. I mean, very rarely do you see cars getting up to mileage like this and still functioning as well as this one. So this is a really good test if you guys are looking into getting some form of station wagon, and if it happens to be something a little bit older as well, because I'll really be able to give you a solid report as to, you know, what, if anything, has gone wrong on this vehicle, and also how it has held up over time. So to begin things off with the economy numbers, because it's a little bit of an older engine and it is an inline 5 with a turbocharger, plus it's a bit of a heavier car too, the economy is not the greatest, especially in terms of what you'd see by today's standards. This car was good for around 20 miles per gallon city and around up to 26 miles per gallon highway. So not the greatest in terms of what you could expect by today's standards, but back then, considering it is turbocharged and considering it's a 5-cylinder engine and considering how big and heavy this thing is, that's not bad. You know, it's what's to be expected for this time frame and this type of vehicle as well. So not the greatest, but also it's kind of what you should be expecting with a car like this. Now, jumping right into reliability and maintenance. The reliability on this car, I can report, has been very, very good. Specifically this car, considering it's made in 2005 and it's driven all 400,000 of its kilometers in Canada through the winters with the salt and the snow. And on top of that, it's been purchased for the reason of getting Dave and his family up to the cottage and roughing it really in the country up north as well. And so in terms of reliability of this specific vehicle, Dave has told me that the biggest problem that he's had is that the all-wheel drive system stopped functioning. He lost all-wheel drive at around 335,000 kilometers. That was about a $1,100 fix, and apart from that, he hasn't experienced any big problems. There's just been the minor wear and tear, which you're going to get for all vehicles, and there haven't been any big problems that he's really experienced. And I can also report that everything also does work. All of the power options work. The sunroof still works. You know, all of the power windows, power seats still work. Even the air conditioning still blows cold. Power steering still feels healthy as well. I mean, you can tell that you're driving an older vehicle just by the way that it feels. But everything still also does feel very tight and connected, and you're not getting a lot of suspension noises from the bushings, not a lot of cabin noise as well, or rattling trim. There are a few things that are rattling around, but in terms of the amount of noise that's getting into the car, it's really not that bad at all, especially considering, again, how old this car is too. So reliability definitely gets a really high score for this car. For general maintenance as well, I'm also going to be rating that quite high, because of the fact that the car is getting up there in age. Parts are becoming more readily available and less expensive as well, and it also is a relatively easy car to work on too. There's not a lot in the way of electrical sensors and technology that there are on today's cars, and so that definitely simplifies things. On top of that, it's got a really big hood, so it's very easy to open that up and get access to the components of the engine bay, so another plus there. And in general, it's really not that difficult of a car to work on. So I would definitely give it a good score in that department as well. And because I've mentioned cabin noise before, I think I might as well just transition right into that now. cabin noise is not what you're gonna find on newer cars of today. There's no question about that. You know, I can hear a decent amount of air rushing over me at the moment, and I'm only doing 60 kilometers an hour right now, which is around 40 for those in the States. There's quite a few things kind of rattling around, and there are quite a few trim items that you can tell have started to let go a little bit, so that's also something to consider. So for those that are conscious about the amount of noise that gets into the car, both from the outside and just from the noise that the trim makes and the rattling of the components within the car, this is something that you're probably going to want to consider, because I do hear quite a few things rattling around. And granted, it does also have 400,000 kilometers on it, so I do feel like you're going to get elements like that of, you know, rattling trim and whatnot in any car with that amount of mileage on it. So we have to take this with a grain of salt and just say, all things considered, it's doing very well, but there are quite a few things rattling around and causing noise, and for some people that is going to really bother them. Now moving on to comfort and space as well. Space is definitely a huge plus in this car. There's no question about that. There's tons of room for my legs and my head and where I'm sitting and whatnot. There's no shortage of space. The owner of this car is 6'2", and he has no problems fitting in this vehicle either. The seats definitely don't hug you like they do in some cars. They really don't wrap, or they're very flat. So if you're going around corners too quickly, or if you're driving aggressively at all, I mean, you tend to kind of move around on the seats a little bit. But that said, they are very comfortable and they are nice to sit on. So I mean, there's a plus there for sure. And in terms of cargo space and just space as a whole, there's tons of it. Because it's a station wagon, you've got so much room in the back, you've got so much leg room everywhere. Doesn't really matter how big you are, you'll probably be able to fit in this car, and you'll be able to carry pretty much anything that you want to carry in the vehicle as well, because it's basically a small van. So in terms of being rated highly for comfort and space, I would definitely rate those high as well. And when we're looking at comfort, I should also mention that the comfort of this car is very high too. It is a comfortable ride. The suspension is set very soft. Now, you do notice that when you're going around corners, because it does tend to roll a lot. Feels like I'm gonna tip over even going around this corner at a slow speed. But on the plus side of things, when you're looking for a comfortable ride, you're gonna get it with this car. So a lot of body roll and very soft suspension is definitely gonna make for a comfortable ride. However, if you do want to drive it and have a little bit of fun with it, that's where you'll find some limitations of the suspension. But that to say, I mean, I don't think that this car was really ever meant to drive fast or to be a sporty car. So for what it's meant to do, it does a very good job at doing that. Now, in regards to common problems with these cars in general, there were only a couple that I found that really came to the surface when I was doing my research. The most popular common issue that I found with this car was the fact that it would start to experience transmission problems down the road. And so people were complaining of experiencing a transmission that would either start to slip, or it would be really rough when changing gears, or it would actually just not be shifting at all. And so that's a pretty hefty repair, especially with a car that has all-wheel drive. So that's definitely something that you want to watch out for. And if you're going to be looking into a car like this, just maybe ask the question about, you know, has it ever had transmission problems, or has the transmission already been fixed as well? Has it already been replaced? Because that could also save you a big repair down the road. And the second problem that came to the surface quite frequently was one that involved an oil leakage from the PCV housing as well. And in order to fix that, the housing itself would have to be changed. So thankfully, that's not the biggest deal in the world. The PCV valve is relatively easy to access in this car, and it's not that big of a fix, but it is a hassle, especially when you've got an oil leak. And I found that based on what I was reading, that when the oil would leak from that housing, it would drip on hot components of the engine bay. So you'd start to get that burning oil smell in the cabin, which is never a pleasant thing to experience. And it would be something that you should definitely get fixed, especially because you don't want oil to be leaking anywhere from the car, just because of how important oil is for the engine. So in terms of maintenance and reliability as a whole, definitely high scores there in my books. As I mentioned, you might want to watch out for those common problems. Anything to do with the transmission or the drivetrain, you're going to want to watch out for. But apart from that, these cars were known to be very reliable and very dependable, and that's exactly what I can report from this one right here too.
Also worth noting here is the element of safety. Volvos in general are very safe cars, and the XC70 is no exception. You may have seen my note at the beginning of the video where I had mentioned that there was some damage on the front end of this car because it had recently hit a deer, and I wanted to quickly elaborate on that because I'm told that this car actually punted the deer across the road while traveling at a good rate of speed, and the only damage done to the car was a slight dent in the hood and a missing grille. So in regards to safety, you're definitely getting a solid car when it comes to the XC70.
And that really only leaves me with just the fun factor, which I don't expect to be rated too highly, but let's see what this inline 5 can do. Oh yeah! Put it down into sport mode for that little run. It's definitely not fast. There's no question about that. It's not fast. Man, does it ever roll though. Oh my. Like when you're accelerating or braking, this thing just dips and dives all over the place. It reminds me of those older Buicks actually, where when you take them around a corner, you feel like the car is actually going to just roll over. That's exactly what this reminds me of. I'm going to do it again here. I'm going to make a turn. We'll do another run. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, let's do this. Station wagon power. That's got to be 0 to 60 in like, that wasn't 60 by the way, but that's got to be 0 to 60 in probably like 8 or 9 seconds or something like that. Not the most fun car. Put a smile on my face mainly just because of the hilariousness of it. But when it comes to the fun factor as a whole, obviously it's not going to be rated that high. This car is meant to be comfortable, it's meant to be spacious, it's meant to be easy going on the road, so it does those tasks very well. But in terms of the fun factor, obviously it's not going to be that high because it was never meant to do that. So props to Volvo for making a fantastic car. I've heard across the board that this is a very reliable vehicle. I can report the same thing from talking to Dave and from witnessing the fact that this has over 400,000 kilometers and it's still going strong. It still starts every day and it still brings this entire family up to the cottage whenever they need it to. So if you're looking for a station wagon that is in and around this era for years, I would definitely look into this. I highly recommend this car in terms of reliability and in terms of a practical vehicle. It's not that fast, it's not a lot of fun, but in regards to something that's going to get you where you need to be and carry basically whatever you need it to carry, this is a really good option for anybody looking for a vehicle like that. So guys, this has been my review of the second generation 2005 Volvo XC70 station wagon. Thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate all of the support and the views. Be sure to remember to click like and subscribe if you want to continue following the channel and for ongoing automotive how-to tips and tricks and reviews. And until next time, thank you again and God bless. Take care.